Now that we've looked at some of the basic features of segregated funds, we have to get into a little bit more of the detail around them. One of the important details is determining exactly when the maturity date will be. And the timing of the deposits, the type of contract, are both going to help to determine when that maturity date will be. We have two alternate methods of determining the maturity date. One is the deposit-based method. The deposit-based method is most commonly used when you have somebody who's making lump sum deposits. And what happens with this deposit-based method basically is that each deposit has its own maturity date. And no other deposit is going to affect the maturity date of the already existing deposits. And I'll show you an example of how this works. In practice, you would have somebody who makes a deposit on, let's say, the 7th of August of 2012, and that deposit will then have a maturity date, assuming it's a 10-year maturity date. It could be a 15-year or longer maturity date, but let's say 10 years. That deposit will have a maturity date of the 7th of August of 2022. And then a subsequent deposit is made, let's say on the 15th of November of 2014. That deposit will have a maturity date of the 15th of November of 2024. And then a third deposit made, let's say on the 22nd of May of 2015, and that deposit will have also its own maturity date of the 22nd of May of 2025. So what you have here is within one contract, you have three different maturity dates, a different maturity date for each deposit that was made, which is why we refer to this as a deposit-based method, because we're going to determine our maturity dates based on each individual deposit. That's different than our contract or policy-based method. The contract or policy-based method is normally used when we have somebody who's making regular and ongoing deposits, such as a dollar cost averaging plan or a pre-authorized contribution plan, whatever term we're going to apply to it. The type of thing that most investors are going to do, at least when they're getting started, the $100 a month or $200 a month type of plans that lots of investors use when using segregated funds. And here, the entire contract, as the name implies, or the entire policy, has one maturity date. And basically, each additional deposit is going to push that maturity date back. And this is practical because if you have somebody who's putting money in each month, they don't want that contract maturing every month 10 years from now. They are probably saving for some long-term objective, and as such, it's more appropriate to have maturity when they get closer to that long-term objective. So this is what you might see here. You have somebody who's putting money in each month. So they put some money in on the 7th of August 2012. In fact, their maturity date will be the end of the year, 10 years out. So they will have a maturity date of the 31st of December of 2012. And then should they make another deposit, sorry about that, on the, let's say, 7th of September of 2012, they will have a maturity date still of the 31st of December of 2012. That is, we haven't affected their existing maturity dates. And they continue to make maturity dates, let's say, on the 7th of each month through the entire year of 2012. At the end of all of that, their maturity date is still going to be the 31st of December of 2012. But that person probably continues into 2013 making deposits, so they make a deposit into their seg fund contract on the 7th of January of 2013. They will have a maturity date for that contract now of the 31st of December of 2013, which is fine. They're still making deposits. They probably don't mind that their maturity date is pushed back. If they're not happy with that, then their solution is to go start a new contract, and then they can keep their existing maturity dates. If they continue to make a deposit here, 8th of February of 2013, they still have that same maturity date. And what's really happened here is that this has rendered their old maturity date irrelevant. So these old 31 December of 2012 maturity dates are no longer valid. We're only concerned now with these 2013 maturity dates. So if they should continue to make deposits here in 2014, for example, so they make a deposit, let's say again, just the 7th of each month, and we get to the 7th of January of 2014, they make a deposit here. They're now going to have a maturity date of the 31st of December of 2014, which now means that this 2013 maturity date no longer applies, and now their entire contract will have a maturity date of 2014, which again makes good sense because they're still in this accumulation phase. They don't want to have these old deposits maturing. That's going to be a pain to manage. Instead, they want everything to mature when they need it, which is presumably, oh, and I'm sorry, I see I made a mistake here, pretty much all the way along. This would be 2022, sorry, 2022, 2022, 2023, and 2024. So 10 years out. I know you got the idea as I was going through it. Sorry about that. So yeah, deposits are all going to be 10 years out. So when you acquire your segregated fund contract, sorry, maturity dates are going to be 10 years out. So when you acquire your segregated fund contract, you're going to consider whether you want this type of treatment, which is more appropriate for lump sum deposits, or this type of treatment, which is more appropriate for those dollar cost averaging or pre-authorized contribution types of plans. All right, thanks very much. We still have a fair bit of detail to go through with our segregated funds, but that gets us one of those technical details out of the way.